The morning sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the quiet streets of Crestwood. The town was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing ever changed. Until today. A sleek black car with tinted windows rolled into the school parking lot, its engine purring like a contented lion. The students milling around the entrance stopped mid-conversation, their eyes glued to the unfamiliar vehicle. Who could it be? No one in Crestwood drove a car like that. The door opened, and out stepped a boy. He was tall, with dark skin, and a quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from him. His clothes were simple: plain jeans, a white t-shirt, and sneakers that looked like they'd seen better days. He carried a worn backpack slung over one shoulder, and his eyes scanned the school building with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Who's that?" someone whispered. "New kid," another replied, shrugging. "Looks like he shops at the thrift store." A few snickers rippled through the crowd. The boy, whose name was Marcus, ignored them. He was used to being the new kid. His father's job had taken them all over the world: Tokyo, Paris, Dubai. But Crestwood was different. It was small, unassuming, and nothing like the bustling cities he was used to. Still, Marcus had learned to adapt. He always did. As he walked toward the school entrance, a group of boys stepped into his path. They were the usual suspects, the ones who thought they ruled the school. At the front was Jake, the self-proclaimed king of Crestwood High. He was tall, with a smirk that never seemed to leave his face, and a group of lackeys who followed him everywhere. "Well, well, well," Jake said, looking Marcus up and down. "What do we have here? A newbie who thinks he's too cool to say hi." Marcus stopped, his expression calm. "I'm just here to go to class," he said, his voice steady. Jake laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Class? You think you're gonna fit in here? Look at you. You look like you crawled out of a dumpster." The other boys laughed, their voices echoing across the parking lot. Marcus clenched his fists, but said nothing. He had dealt with bullies before, and he knew better than to give them the reaction they wanted. "Whatever," he muttered, stepping around them. Jake grabbed his arm. "Not so fast, newbie. You don't just walk away from me." Marcus turned, his eyes locking onto Jake's. For a moment, the air between them crackled with tension. Then, Marcus pulled his arm free and walked away, leaving Jake and his gang staring after him. The whispers started almost immediately. "Did you see that? He just stood up to Jake. Who does he think he is?" "I don't know, but he's got guts." Inside the school, Marcus made his way to the office to pick up his schedule. The secretary, a kind-looking woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose, smiled at him. "You must be Marcus," she said. "Welcome to Crestwood High. I hope you'll like it here." Marcus nodded, but he wasn't so sure. He had a feeling this place was going to be different, and not in a good way. The day passed in a blur of introductions, awkward stares, and whispered comments. Marcus kept to himself, focusing on his classes and ignoring the occasional snide remark. But Jake wasn't done with him. At lunch, Marcus found himself sitting alone at a table in the corner of the cafeteria. He had just opened his lunchbox when Jake and his gang appeared, their trays in hand. "Mind if we join you?" Jake asked, though it was clear he wasn't really asking. Marcus shrugged. "It's a free country." Jake sat down across from him, his friends flanking him on either side. "So, Marcus," he said, leaning forward, "where are you from?" "Around," Marcus replied, not looking up from his sandwich. Jake smirked. "Around, huh? That's real specific. What's your dad do? Janitor? Garbage man?" Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He knew what Jake was trying to do, and he wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. "Cat got your tongue?" Jake pressed. "Or are you just too embarrassed to say?" Marcus finally looked up, his eyes meeting Jake's. "My dad's a CEO," he said, his voice calm but firm. The table erupted in laughter. "A CEO," Jake repeated, wiping tears from his eyes. "Yeah, right. And I'm the President of the United States." Marcus didn't bother arguing. He knew the truth, and that was all that mattered. But as the laughter died down, he couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration. Why did people like Jake always have to make everything so difficult? The next day, the entire school was called to the auditorium for an emergency assembly. The principal, a stern-looking man with graying hair, stood at the podium, his expression grim. "Students," he began, his voice echoing through the room. "I'm afraid I have some bad news. Due to budget cuts, Crestwood High is facing closure at the end of the semester."
A collective gasp filled the room. Marcus sat in the back, his mind racing. He had only been here a few days, but he could see how much this school meant to the students. It wasn't just a building, it was a community. "What does that mean for us?" someone shouted from the crowd. The principal sighed. "It means that unless we can find a way to secure funding, this will be our last year as a school." The room erupted into chaos. Students shouted questions, some cried, and others just sat in stunned silence. Marcus watched it all, a plan forming in his mind. He knew what he had to do. The news of Crestwood High's impending closure spread like wildfire. By the end of the day, the hallways were filled with whispers of uncertainty. Students huddled in groups, discussing their options, while teachers tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. But it was clear, the school was in trouble. Marcus, however, seemed unfazed. He moved through the chaos with the same quiet confidence he'd shown since his arrival. While others panicked, he stayed focused, his mind working on a plan. He knew what he had to do, but he also knew it wouldn't be easy. That afternoon, as the final bell rang, Marcus made his way to the principal's office. The door was slightly ajar, and he could hear the principal speaking in hushed tones. "I don't know what to tell the parents," the principal said, his voice heavy with frustration. "We've exhausted every option. Unless a miracle happens, Crestwood High is done." Marcus knocked on the door, and the principal looked up, surprised. "Marcus," he said, forcing a smile. "What can I do for you?" "I think I can help," Marcus said, stepping inside. The principal raised an eyebrow. "Help? How?" Marcus took a deep breath. "My father is the CEO of Blackstone Industries. If I talk to him, I'm sure he'll be willing to step in and save the school." For a moment, the principal just stared at him, as if trying to process what he'd just heard. Then, he let out a short laugh. "Marcus, I appreciate the thought, but this isn't a joke. We're talking about millions of dollars here." "I'm serious," Marcus said, his voice firm. "My father has the resources, and he's always looking for ways to give back. If I explain the situation, I know he'll help." The principal studied him, his expression a mix of skepticism and hope. "And you're sure about this?" Marcus nodded. "I'll call him tonight." That evening, Marcus sat in his room, staring at his phone. He hadn't spoken to his father in weeks. Their relationship was complicated. His father was a busy man, always traveling, always working. But Marcus knew that if anyone could save Crestwood High, it was him. He dialed the number and waited as the phone rang. After a few seconds, a deep, authoritative voice answered. "Marcus," his father said. "This is a surprise." "Hey, Dad," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I need your help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What's wrong?" Marcus explained the situation, the budget cuts, the school's impending closure, and the impact it would have on the students and the community. When he finished, there was silence. "Dad," Marcus said, unsure if his father was still on the line. "I'll take care of it," his father said finally. "But on one condition." "What's that?" Marcus asked. "I want you to take a more active role in the company," his father replied. "You're almost 18, Marcus. It's time you started thinking about your future." Marcus hesitated. He had always avoided getting involved in his father's business, preferring to stay out of the spotlight. But if this was the price to save Crestwood High, he was willing to pay it. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." The next morning, the entire school was called to the auditorium once again. This time, the atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anticipation. The principal stood at the podium, his expression unreadable. Students, faculty, he began, his voice steady. "I have an important announcement to make. Thanks to the generosity of a donor, Crestwood High will remain open." The room erupted into cheers. Students hugged each other, tears streaming down their faces. But the principal held up a hand, silencing the crowd. "There's more," he said. "The donor has also agreed to fund a complete renovation of the school, including new facilities, updated technology, and scholarships for students in need." The cheers grew louder, but Marcus sat quietly in the back, a small smile playing on his lips. He had done it. Crestwood High was saved. As the students filed out of the auditorium, Marcus was stopped by Jake and his gang. Jake's usual smirk was gone, replaced by a look of confusion. "What's going on, Marcus?" Jake asked. "Did you have something to do with this?" Marcus shrugged. "Maybe." Jake narrowed his eyes. "Who are you really?" Before Marcus could respond, the principal appeared at his side. "Marcus," he said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I think it's time everyone knew the truth." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. The principal turned to the crowd of students who had gathered around. "Students," he said, his voice ringing out, "I'd like to introduce you to Marcus Blackstone, the son of billionaire CEO Robert Blackstone. It's thanks to him and his family that our school has been saved." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Marcus, who stood tall, his expression calm. Jake's jaw dropped, his face turning red with embarrassment. You're a Blackstone?" Jake stammered. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, and I'd appreciate it if you stopped bullying people. It's not a good look." The crowd erupted into laughter, and Jake slunk away, his gang following close behind. For the first time since his arrival, Marcus felt like he belonged. In the weeks that followed, Crestwood High underwent a transformation. Construction crews arrived, and the once dilapidated building began to take on a new life. Students who had once looked at Marcus with suspicion now greeted him with smiles and gratitude. But Marcus didn't let it go to his head. He remained humble, focusing on his studies and getting to know his classmates. He even started a mentorship program, helping students who were struggling academically. As for Jake, he kept his distance, though Marcus noticed a change in him. The once arrogant bully seemed quieter, more reflective. One day, as Marcus was leaving school, Jake approached him. "Hey," Jake said, his voice hesitant. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything." Marcus nodded. "Thanks. That means a lot." Jake hesitated, then extended his hand. Marcus shook it, and for the first time, there was a sense of mutual respect between them. The renovation of Crestwood High was nothing short of miraculous. Within months, the old, crumbling building was transformed into a state-of-the-art facility. New classrooms equipped with the latest technology, a refurbished gymnasium, and even a brand-new library became the pride of the town. The students walked the halls with a renewed sense of pride, and the teachers seemed to stand a little taller. But the changes weren't just physical. The spirit of the school had shifted. The students, inspired by Marcus's humility and generosity, began to treat each other with more kindness and respect. Even Jake, once the school's most notorious bully, seemed to be turning over a new leaf. He started showing up to class on time, participating in group projects, and even apologized to some of the students he had wronged. Marcus, however, was busier than ever. True to his word, his father had begun involving him in the operations of Blackstone Industries. It started with small tasks, attending meetings, reviewing reports, and shadowing executives. But as the weeks went by, Marcus found himself taking on more responsibility. It was overwhelming at times, but he was determined to prove himself. One afternoon, Marcus sat in the school library, staring at a stack of paperwork. He had a meeting with his father later that day, and he needed to prepare. But he also had a history test to study for and a group project due by the end of the week. Balancing school and work was proving to be more challenging than he had anticipated. "Hey, Marcus," a voice called out. He looked up to see Sarah, one of his classmates, standing in front of him. She was holding a stack of books and looked a little nervous. "Hey, Sarah," Marcus said, forcing a smile. "What's up?" "I was wondering if you could help me with the math homework," she said, her voice hesitant. "I'm really struggling with it." Marcus glanced at his paperwork, then back at Sarah. He knew he didn't have the time, but he also couldn't say no. "Sure," he said, pushing his papers aside. "Let's take a look." As they worked through the problems together, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Helping others had always been important to him, and it was a reminder of why he had fought so hard to save Crestwood High. Later that evening, Marcus found himself sitting in his father's office at Blackstone Industries. The room was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city skyline. His father sat across from him, his expression unreadable. "So," his father began, leaning back in his chair, "how are things at school?" "Good," Marcus replied. "The renovations are almost complete, and the students are really excited." His father nodded. "And how are you managing your responsibilities here?" Marcus hesitated. "It's a lot, but I'm learning." His father studied him for a moment, then leaned forward. "Marcus, I'm proud of you. What you did for that school, it shows leadership and compassion. But you need to remember that you can't do everything on your own. Delegation is key." Marcus nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure how to apply that advice. He had always been the kind of person who wanted to handle things himself. "I've arranged for you to meet with one of our top executives," his father continued. "She'll help you prioritize your tasks and manage your time more effectively." "Thanks, Dad," Marcus said, feeling a small sense of relief. The next day, Marcus met with the executive his father had mentioned. Her name was Ms. Carter, and she was every bit as intimidating as she was brilliant. She had a no-nonsense attitude and a sharp eye for detail, but she also had a way of making Marcus feel at ease. "Let's start by identifying your priorities," she said, spreading a series of documents across the table. "School, work, and personal time. You need to find a balance between all three." Marcus nodded, taking notes as she spoke. By the end of the meeting, he had a clear plan in place. It wasn't going to be easy, but he felt more confident about his ability to manage everything. Back at school, the changes continued to unfold. The mentorship program Marcus had started was gaining traction, with more students signing up to be mentors or ments. The sense of community was stronger than ever, and the school was beginning to attract attention from other districts. One day, a local news crew arrived to do a feature on Crestwood High. They interviewed students, teachers, and even Marcus, who tried to downplay his role in the school's transformation. "It wasn't just me," he said, looking directly into the camera. "It was the entire community coming together to make a difference. That's what really saved the school." The segment aired that evening, and the response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from across the country, and Crestwood High became a symbol of hope and resilience. As the school year drew to a close, Marcus found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. He had started the year as the new kid, an outsider trying to find his place. Now he was a leader, someone his peers looked up to and respected. But he also knew that his journey was far from over. His responsibilities at Blackstone Industries were only going to grow, and he still had a lot to learn. Still, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. One evening, as he stood on the school's newly renovated football field, Marcus took a deep breath and looked up at the stars. He had come a long way, but he knew this was just the beginning. The summer after his junior year was a turning point for Marcus. With school out of session, he threw himself into his work at Blackstone Industries. His father had assigned him to a high-profile project, a partnership with a nonprofit organization aimed at providing educational resources to underprivileged communities. It was a massive undertaking, but Marcus was determined to prove himself. The project, called Bright Futures, was designed to build schools, provide scholarships, and fund mentorship programs in underserved areas. Marcus was tasked with overseeing the initiative, working closely with a team of executives, educators, and community leaders. It was a daunting responsibility, but Marcus approached it with the same determination and humility that had defined his time at Crestwood High. One of his first tasks was to visit one of the communities that would benefit from the program. The town of Willow Creek was a small, rural community with a struggling school system. As Marcus walked through the town, he was struck by the stark contrast to his own life. The schools were run down, the classrooms overcrowded, and the students lacked basic resources like textbooks and computers. But despite the challenges, the people of Willow Creek were resilient. They greeted Marcus with warmth and gratitude, and their optimism inspired him. He spent the day meeting with teachers, students, and parents, listening to their stories and learning about their needs. That evening, as he sat in his hotel room, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. He knew that bright futures had the potential to make a real difference, but he also knew that it would take more than just money. It would take dedication, collaboration, and a willingness to listen. Back at Blackstone Industries, Marcus presented his findings to the team. He spoke passionately about the people he had met and the challenges they faced. His enthusiasm was contagious, and the team quickly rallied around the project. But not everyone was on board. One of the executives, a man named Mr. Thompson, was skeptical. "This is a noble idea," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But let's not forget that we're a business, not a charity. We need to see a return on investment." Marcus bristled at the comment, but kept his composure. "I understand your concerns," he said, his voice steady. "But this isn't just about charity. It's about creating opportunities for people to succeed. When we invest in education, we're investing in the future, not just for these communities, but for all of us." The room fell silent, and Marcus could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him. For a moment, he wondered if he had gone too far. But then his father spoke up. "Marcus is right," he said, his voice firm. "This is about more than just profits. It's about making a difference. And if we do this right, it will benefit everyone." The tension in the room eased, and the team began to discuss next steps. Marcus felt a surge of pride, but he also knew that this was just the beginning. There was still a lot of work to be done. As the weeks went by, Marcus found himself juggling multiple responsibilities. He spent his days at Blackstone Industries, attending meetings, reviewing proposals, and working with the Bright Futures team. In the evenings, he continued to mentor students at Crestwood High, helping them prepare for college and navigate the challenges of adolescence. It wasn't easy, but Marcus was determined to make it work. He had learned the importance of delegation and time management, and he relied on his team to help him stay on track. He also made sure to carve out time for himself, whether it was going for a run or simply relaxing with a book. One evening, as he was leaving Crestwood High, Marcus ran into Jake. The two hadn't spoken much since the incident in the auditorium, but Jake seemed different now, more thoughtful, less arrogant. "Hey, Marcus," Jake said, his voice hesitant. "Got a minute?" "Sure," Marcus replied, curious. Jake took a deep breath. "I just wanted to say thanks for everything. You didn't have to help me, but you did, and it's made a difference." Marcus smiled. "You're welcome, Jake. I'm glad to hear that." Jake nodded, then hesitated. "I was also wondering if you could give me some advice. I've been thinking about what I want to do after high school, and I'm not really sure where to start." Marcus was surprised but pleased. "Of course," he said. "Let's sit down and talk." As the summer came to an end, Marcus returned to Crestwood High for his senior year. The school was thriving, and the students were more motivated than ever. The mentorship program had expanded, and Marcus was proud to see his classmates stepping up as leaders. But Marcus's responsibilities at Blackstone Industries continued to grow. The Bright Futures project was gaining momentum, and he was increasingly being called upon to represent the company at events and conferences. It was a lot to handle, but Marcus was determined to rise to the challenge. One evening, as he was preparing for a major presentation, Marcus received a call from his father. "I just wanted to say how proud I am of you," his father said, his voice filled with warmth. "You've taken on so much, and you've handled it with grace and determination. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've proven that you have what it takes to lead." Marcus felt a swell of emotion. "Thanks, Dad," he said. "That means a lot." As Marcus stood on the stage at the Bright Futures launch event, he felt a sense of pride and purpose. The room was filled with community leaders, educators, and students, all united by a shared vision of a brighter future. "This is just the beginning," Marcus said, his voice ringing out. "Together, we can create opportunities for people to succeed, to dream, and to achieve. And in doing so, we're not just changing lives, we're changing the world. The room erupted into applause, and Marcus felt a surge of hope. He knew that there would be challenges ahead, but he also knew that he was ready to face them. With the support of his family, his friends, and his community, he was determined to make a difference. Marcus's senior year at Crestwood High was a whirlwind of activity. Between his responsibilities at Blackstone Industries, his mentorship program, and his schoolwork, he barely had a moment to spare. But despite the chaos, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He was making a difference, not just in his own life, but in the lives of others. The mentorship program Marcus had started the previous year had grown into one of the school's most successful initiatives. What had begun as a small effort to help a few students had blossomed into a full-fledged movement. Seniors were mentoring freshmen, athletes were tutoring struggling students, and even Jake had become a mentor to a group of middle schoolers. One afternoon, Marcus sat in the school library, watching as a group of students worked together on a science project. The room was filled with laughter and lively discussion, and Marcus couldn't help but smile. This was what it was all about, creating a community where everyone felt supported and empowered to succeed. Sarah, one of the students Marcus had helped the previous year, approached him with a bright smile. "Hey, Marcus," she said. "I just wanted to thank you. Because of you, I'm actually passing math now. And I've started thinking about college." Marcus felt a swell of pride. "That's amazing, Sarah. I'm so proud of you." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You've made such a difference here, Marcus. I don't think you realize how much you've inspired all of us." Marcus was touched by her words. He had never set out to be a hero, but hearing how his actions had impacted others reminded him why he had worked so hard in the first place. As the school year progressed, Marcus began working on his final project, a proposal to expand the Bright Futures initiative to other communities. He spent countless hours researching, writing, and refining his ideas, determined to create a plan that would have a lasting impact. One evening, as he was putting the finishing touches on his proposal, his father walked into his room. "How's it coming?" he asked, glancing at the stack of papers on Marcus's desk. "Almost done," Marcus replied, leaning back in his chair. "I just want to make sure it's perfect." His father smiled. "You've always been a perfectionist. But don't forget to take a step back and appreciate how far you've come." Marcus nodded, though he knew it was easier said than done. He had always been driven by a desire to do his best, but his father's words reminded him to take a moment to reflect on his journey. The day of the presentation arrived, and Marcus stood in front of a room filled with executives, educators, and community leaders. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of all the hard work he had put into this moment. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady. "What I'm about to present is more than just a proposal. It's a vision for the future. A future where every child, no matter where they come from, has the opportunity to succeed." As he outlined his plan, Marcus spoke passionately about the importance of education, community, and collaboration. He shared stories from his time at Crestwood High and his visits to Willow Creek, emphasizing the impact that even small actions could have. When he finished, the room erupted into applause. Marcus felt a surge of pride and relief, knowing that he had done his best. Graduation day was bittersweet for Marcus. As he stood on the stage in his cap and gown, he looked out at the sea of faces in the audience. His classmates, his teachers, his family, they were all there to celebrate this milestone. When it was his turn to speak, Marcus stepped up to the podium. "When I first came to Crestwood High, I didn't know what to expect," he began. "But what I found was a community that welcomed me, challenged me, and inspired me to be my best self." He paused, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. "We've been through a lot together, budget cuts, renovations, and countless late-night study sessions. But through it all, we've shown that when we come together, there's nothing we can't achieve." The audience erupted into cheers, and Marcus felt a swell of emotion. He had come a long way since his first day at Crestwood High, and he knew that this was just the beginning. After graduation, Marcus took a gap year to focus on the Bright Futures initiative. He traveled to communities across the country, working with local leaders to implement the program and create opportunities for students. But he never forgot his roots. He stayed in touch with his classmates and continued to support Crestwood High, even from afar. And when the time came, he enrolled at Harvard University, where he planned to study business and education. As he stood on the campus of Harvard, Marcus felt a sense of excitement and possibility. He knew that there would be challenges ahead, but he also knew that he was ready to face them. With the lessons he had learned at Crestwood High and the support of his family and friends, he was determined to make a difference in the world. Years later, Marcus returned to Crestwood High for a special ceremony. The school had been renamed in his honor, the Marcus Blackstone Academy, and a plaque had been installed in the front hallway, commemorating his contributions. As he stood in front of the plaque, Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had started as the new kid, an outsider trying to find his place. But through hard work, determination, and a commitment to helping others, he had become a leader, an inspiration, and a symbol of hope. And as he looked out at the students who now walked the halls of the Marcus Blackstone Academy, he knew that his legacy would live on, not just in the name of the school, but in the lives of the students he had touched. Marcus's senior year was a balancing act like no other. Between his responsibilities at Blackstone Industries, his mentorship program at Crestwood High, and his college applications, he was constantly on the move. But he thrived under the pressure, driven by a desire to leave a lasting impact on his school and community. The mentorship program Marcus had started the previous year had become a cornerstone of Crestwood High's culture. What began as a small initiative had grown into a school-wide movement. Seniors were mentoring freshmen, athletes were tutoring struggling students, and even Jake had become a mentor to a group of middle schoolers. One afternoon, Marcus sat in the school library, watching as a group of students worked together on a science project. The room was filled with laughter and lively discussion, and Marcus couldn't help but smile. This was what it was all about, creating a community where everyone felt supported and empowered to succeed. Sarah, one of the students Marcus had helped the previous year, approached him with a bright smile. "Hey Marcus," she said, "I just wanted to thank you. Because of you, I'm actually passing math now. And I've started thinking about college." Marcus felt a swell of pride. "That's amazing, Sarah. I'm so proud of you." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You've made such a difference here, Marcus. I don't think you realize how much you've inspired all of us." Marcus was touched by her words. He had never set out to be a hero, but hearing how his actions had impacted others reminded him why he had worked so hard in the first place. As the school year progressed, Marcus began working on his final project, a proposal to expand the Bright Futures initiative to other communities. He spent countless hours researching, writing, and refining his ideas, determined to create a plan that would have a lasting impact. One evening, as he was putting the finishing touches on his proposal, his father walked into his room. "How's it coming?" he asked, glancing at the stack of papers on Marcus's desk. "Almost done," Marcus replied, leaning back in his chair. "I just want to make sure it's perfect." His father smiled. "You've always been a perfectionist. But don't forget to take a step back and appreciate how far you've come." Marcus nodded, though he knew it was easier said than done. He had always been driven by a desire to do his best, but his father's words reminded him to take a moment to reflect on his journey. The day of the presentation arrived, and Marcus stood in front of a room filled with executives, educators, and community leaders. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of all the hard work he had put into this moment. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady. "What I'm about to present is more than just a proposal. It's a vision for the future. A future where every child, no matter where they come from, has the opportunity to succeed." As he outlined his plan, Marcus spoke passionately about the importance of education, community, and collaboration. He shared stories from his time at Crestwood High and his visits to Willow Creek, emphasizing the impact that even small actions could have. When he finished, the room erupted into applause. Marcus felt a surge of pride and relief, knowing that he had done his best. Graduation day was bittersweet for Marcus. As he stood on the stage in his cap and gown, He looked out at the sea of faces in the audience. His classmates, his teachers, his family, they were all there to celebrate this milestone. When it was his turn to speak, Marcus stepped up to the podium. "When I first came to Crestwood High, I didn't know what to expect," he began. "But what I found was a community that welcomed me, challenged me, and inspired me to be my best self." He paused, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. "We've been through a lot together, budget cuts, renovations, and countless late-night study sessions. But through it all, we've shown that when we come together, there's nothing we can't achieve." The audience erupted into cheers, and Marcus felt a swell of emotion. He had come a long way since his first day at Crestwood High, and he knew that this was just the beginning. After graduation, Marcus took a gap year to focus on the Bright Futures initiative. He traveled to communities across the country, working with local leaders to implement the program and create opportunities for students. One of his first stops was Willow Creek, the small town he had visited the previous summer. The community had embraced the Bright Futures program, and Marcus was thrilled to see the progress they had made. The school had been renovated, new teachers had been hired, and the students were thriving. As he walked through the town, Marcus was greeted with smiles and gratitude. The people of Willow Creek had not forgotten his efforts, and their appreciation reminded him why he had worked so hard in the first place. But the gap year wasn't without its challenges. Marcus faced setbacks, bureaucratic hurdles, and moments of self-doubt. There were times when he wondered if he was making a difference, if all his efforts were worth it. One evening, as he sat in his hotel room, Marcus called his father. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted, his voice heavy with frustration. "Marcus," his father said, his tone firm but kind, "you've already done more than most people ever will. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, remember why you started this in the first place. Think about the students at Crestwood High, the people of Willow Creek. They believe in you because you've shown them what's possible." His father's words gave Marcus the strength to keep going. He reminded himself that change takes time, and that every small step forward was a victory. After his gap year, Marcus enrolled at Harvard University, where he planned to study business and education. The transition to college life was challenging, but Marcus was determined to make the most of this new chapter. At Harvard, Marcus threw himself into his studies, eager to learn everything he could about business, education, and leadership. He joined student organizations, attended lectures, and even started a campus chapter of the Bright Futures initiative. But college wasn't just about academics. Marcus also made time for new friendships, late-night conversations, and moments of self-discovery. He was no longer just the son of a billionaire CEO or the savior of Crestwood High. He was Marcus, a young man figuring out who he was and what he wanted to achieve. Years later, Marcus returned to Crestwood High for a special ceremony. The school had been renamed in his honor, the Marcus Blackstone Academy, and a plaque had been installed in the front hallway, commemorating his contributions. As he stood in front of the plaque, Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had started as the new kid, an outsider trying to find his place. But through hard work, determination, and a commitment to helping others, he had become a leader, an inspiration, and a symbol of hope. And as he looked out at the students who now walked the halls of the Marcus Blackstone Academy, he knew that his legacy would live on, not just in the name of the school, but in the lives of the students he had touched. Marcus's time at Harvard was a period of immense growth. He was no longer just a kid who saved Crestwood High. He was a young leader with a vision to change the world. But with that vision came new challenges, new relationships, and a deeper understanding of what it meant to make a difference. The first semester at Harvard was a whirlwind. Marcus was surrounded by some of the brightest minds in the world, and the pressure to excel was intense. But he thrived in the environment, fueled by his passion for education and his desire to make a difference. One of his first classes was a seminar on social entrepreneurship, taught by Professor Evelyn Carter, a renowned expert in the field. Marcus was immediately drawn to her insights and her ability to connect theory with real-world impact. After class one day, he approached her with an idea. "Professor Carter," he said, "I've been working on an initiative called Bright Futures. It's about creating educational opportunities for underserved communities. I'd love to get your feedback on how we can scale it. Professor Carter listened intently, her eyes lighting up with interest. Marcus, this is exactly the kind of work we need more of in the world. Let's set up a meeting to discuss how we can take this to the next level. With Professor Carter's guidance, Marcus began to refine and expand the Bright Futures initiative. They developed a framework for scaling the program, focusing on partnerships with local organizations, sustainable funding models, and measurable outcomes. Marcus also recruited a team of passionate Harvard students to help him. Among them was Priya, a sophomore from India who had grown up in a rural village and understood the challenges of accessing quality education. Her insights were invaluable, and she quickly became one of Marcus's closest collaborators. Together, they launched pilot programs in 3 new communities, one in rural Appalachia, one in an urban neighborhood in Chicago, and one in a small town in Kenya. The results were transformative. Schools were renovated, teachers were trained, and students were given access to resources they had never had before. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. During a visit to the Chicago pilot program, Marcus faced resistance from a local leader who was skeptical of outsiders coming in to fix their community. "We don't need charity," the leader said, her tone sharp. "We need respect and collaboration." Marcus took her words to heart. He realized that Bright Futures couldn't just be about providing resources. It had to be about listening, learning, and working together. He made it a priority to involve community members in every decision, ensuring that the program was truly meeting their needs. After graduating from Harvard with honors, Marcus faced a crossroads. He had offers from top companies and organizations, but his heart was set on continuing his work with Bright Futures. With his father's support, he decided to dedicate himself full-time to the initiative. Under Marcus's leadership, Bright Futures grew into a global movement. The program expanded to over 20 countries, impacting millions of students and transforming countless communities. Marcus traveled the world, meeting with leaders, educators, and students, and sharing his vision for a brighter future. One of the most memorable moments came during a visit to a school in Kenya. The students had written a song to thank Marcus and his team for the new library and computer lab. As they sang, Marcus felt a surge of emotion. This was why he had started Bright Futures, to create moments like this, where hope and opportunity came alive. Marcus also made it a priority to mentor the next generation of leaders. He started a fellowship program for young people who were passionate about education and social change. Among the first fellows was Sarah, the student from Crestwood High, who had been inspired by Marcus's mentorship. "I never thought I'd be doing something like this," Sarah said during a visit to the Bright Futures headquarters. "But you showed me that anything is possible if you're willing to work for it." Marcus smiled. "You're the future of this movement, Sarah. I can't wait to see what you'll achieve." Years later, Marcus returned to Crestwood High for the 10th anniversary of the school's transformation. The Marcus Blackstone Academy was thriving, with state-of-the-art facilities, a diverse student body, and a culture of excellence and inclusivity. As he stood in front of the school, Marcus reflected on how far he had come. He had started as the new kid, an outsider trying to find his place. But through hard work, determination, and a commitment to helping others, he had become a leader, an inspiration, and a symbol of hope. And as he looked out at the students who now walked the halls of the Marcus Blackstone Academy, he knew that his legacy would live on, not just in the name of the school, but in the lives of the students he had touched. Marcus's story didn't end with Bright Futures or the Marcus Blackstone Academy. It continued in the lives of the people he had inspired. Students like Sarah, communities like Willow Creek, and leaders like Priya. His journey was a testament to the power of one person to make a difference, and a reminder that the ripple effect of kindness and determination could change the world. As Marcus often said, it's not about where you start, it's about where you're going and who you're taking with you. By his early 30s, Marcus had become a globally recognized leader in education and social entrepreneurship. His work with Bright Futures had transformed the lives of millions, and he was frequently invited to speak at international conferences, collaborate with world leaders, and advise governments on education reform. One of Marcus's most significant achievements was being appointed to the United Nations Global Education Council. The council brought together leaders from around the world to address the global education crisis and work toward achieving the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. At his first council meeting, Marcus sat alongside Nobel laureates, CEOs, and heads of state. It was a surreal moment for the once quiet kid from Crestwood High, but he reminded himself of his purpose. This isn't about me, he thought. It's about the millions of kids who deserve a chance to learn and grow. During the meeting, Marcus proposed a bold initiative, a global fund to support grassroots education projects in underserved communities. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and Marcus was tasked with leading the effort. The Global Education Fund became one of Marcus's most ambitious projects. It provided grants, resources, and mentorship to local leaders who were working to improve education in their communities. Marcus traveled tirelessly, visiting projects in remote villages, bustling cities, and everything in between. One of the fund's early successes was a project in Nepal, where a young woman named Anika had started a school for girls in her village. With the fund's support, Anika was able to expand the school, train teachers, and provide scholarships to students who couldn't afford tuition. This is what it's all about, Marcus said during a visit to the school. Empowering people like Anika to create change in their own communities. Amid his professional achievements, Marcus also experienced a personal milestone. He fell in love. Her name was Elena, a journalist who had interviewed him for a documentary about bright futures. They bonded over their shared passion for education and social justice, and their relationship quickly deepened. Elena became Marcus's partner in every sense of the word. She traveled with him, supported his work, and even helped him navigate the challenges of being in the public eye. Together, they dreamed of starting a family and continuing to make a difference in the world. As Marcus entered his 40s, he began to think about the future, not just for himself, but for bright futures and the movement he had built. He knew that true sustainability meant empowering others to lead and ensuring that his work would continue long after he was gone. Marcus made the decision to step back from his role as the face of Bright Futures and appoint a new generation of leaders. Among them was Priya, his former Harvard collaborator, who had become a driving force in the organization. "It's time for new voices and new ideas," Marcus said during a press conference announcing the transition. "I'm incredibly proud of what we've accomplished, but the work is far from over. And I know that Priya and the team will take Bright Futures to even greater heights." Priya, now a seasoned leader in her own right, embraced the challenge. Under her leadership, Bright Futures continued to grow, launching new initiatives and reaching even more communities. Marcus also established the Marcus Blackstone Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting education, leadership development, and social entrepreneurship. The foundation provided scholarships, grants, and mentorship to young people who were passionate about creating change. One of the foundation's first scholarship recipients was a young man named Jamal, who had grown up in a low-income neighborhood and dreamed of becoming a teacher. With the foundation's support, Jamal was able to attend college and eventually returned to his community to start a mentorship program for at-risk youth. "Marcus changed my life," Jamal said during a foundation event. "And now, I want to do the same for others." As Marcus reflected on his journey, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had started as the new kid at Crestwood High, unsure of his place in the world. But through hard work, determination, and a commitment to helping others, he had built a life of purpose and impact. He often thought about his father, who had passed away a few years earlier. Robert Blackstone had been a tough but loving mentor, and Marcus knew that much of his success was due to his father's guidance and support. "I hope I've made you proud, Dad," Marcus whispered one evening as he stood in front of a photo of his father in his office. Marcus's story didn't end with his achievements or accolades. It continued in the lives of the people he had inspired, students like Sarah, leaders like Priya, and changemakers like Jamal. His journey was a testament to the power of one person to make a difference, and a reminder that the ripple effect of kindness and determination could change the world. As Marcus often said, it's not about where you start, it's about where you're going and who you're taking with you. In his later years, Marcus wrote a memoir titled The Ripple Effect, sharing his story and the lessons he had learned along the way. The book became a bestseller, inspiring a new generation of leaders to pursue their dreams and make a difference in the world. Marcus also spent more time with his family, including his 2 children, who were growing up with the same values of compassion and determination that had guided their father's life. And as he watched the sun set over the horizon, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. He had lived a life of purpose, and his legacy would continue to inspire and uplift others for generations to come. As Marcus entered his 50s, he transitioned from being a hands-on leader to a mentor and guide for the next generation of changemakers. His wealth of experience, coupled with his humility and wisdom, made him a sought-after advisor for young entrepreneurs, educators, and activists. Marcus founded the Blackstone Leadership Institute, a global hub for leadership development and social innovation. Located on a sprawling campus in upstate New York, the Institute offered programs, workshops, and retreats for emerging leaders from around the world. One of the Institute's flagship programs was the Bright Futures Fellowship, a year-long immersion for young leaders working on education initiatives. Fellows received mentorship, funding, and access to a global network of experts and collaborators. "This is where the magic happens," Marcus said during the Institute's opening ceremony. "When you bring together passionate, driven individuals and give them the tools to succeed, there's no limit to what they can achieve." Among the first cohort of fellows was a young woman named Amina from Nigeria. Amina had started a nonprofit to provide education and vocational training for girls in her community, and she was determined to scale her impact. Marcus took a special interest in Amina's project, recognizing the same fire and determination he had seen in himself decades earlier. He spent hours mentoring her, sharing lessons from his own journey, and helping her navigate the challenges of leadership. "You're not just building a nonprofit," Marcus told her during one of their sessions. "You're building a movement. And movements start with people who believe in you and your vision." Amina went on to expand her nonprofit, reaching thousands of girls across Nigeria and inspiring a new wave of activism in her country. Marcus's children, now teenagers, began to show an interest in his work. His daughter, Sophia, was particularly passionate about education, while his son, Lucas, was drawn to technology and innovation. Marcus encouraged their interests, but he also made sure they understood the importance of humility and service. "It's not about the spotlight," he told them. "It's about the impact you make and the lives you touch." Together, the family started a scholarship program in honor of Robert Blackstone, providing opportunities for students from underserved communities to attend college. As Marcus approached his 60s, he began to reflect on his life and the legacy he would leave behind. He had achieved more than he ever imagined, but he knew that the true measure of his success was in the lives he had touched and the change he had inspired. To preserve his story and the lessons he had learned, Marcus established the Marcus Blackstone Archives, a digital and physical repository of his work, writings, and speeches. The archives also included stories from the people he had inspired, creating a living testament to the ripple effect of his efforts. One of the most poignant contributions came from Jake, his former bully turned mentor. Jake had gone on to become a teacher and had started a program to combat bullying in schools. "Marcus changed my life," Jake wrote in his submission. "He showed me that it's never too late to change, to grow, and to make a difference." Marcus's memoir, The Ripple Effect, was adapted into a documentary that chronicled his journey and the global impact of Bright Futures. The film premiered at international festivals and was widely acclaimed for its powerful message of hope and resilience. At the premiere, Marcus stood on stage, surrounded by his family, friends, and colleagues. "This isn't just my story," he said. "It's a story of everyone who believed in the power of education, the strength of community, and the possibility of change." and it's a story that will continue long after I'm gone. In his later years, Marcus stepped back from the public eye, choosing to spend more time with his family and focus on personal projects. He wrote a second book, Lessons from the Journey, which offered practical advice and reflections for aspiring leaders. He also continued to mentor young people, often hosting small gatherings at his home where he shared stories, answered questions, and offered guidance. "The world needs you," he would tell them. "Don't wait for permission to make a difference. Start where you are with what you have, and never stop believing in the power of your dreams." Marcus's legacy continued to grow, even as he stepped back from the spotlight. The Bright Futures Initiative, now led by a new generation of leaders, expanded to new regions and launched innovative programs to address emerging challenges in education. The Marcus Blackstone Foundation became a global force for good, supporting thousands of projects and inspiring millions of people to take action in their own communities. And as Marcus watched the sun set over the horizon one evening, he felt a deep sense of peace. He had lived a life of purpose, and his legacy would continue to inspire and uplift others for generations to come. Years after Marcus's passing, the world continued to feel the ripple effect of his work. The schools, scholarships, and programs bearing his name thrived, and his story was taught in classrooms around the world as an example of the power of one person to make a difference. But perhaps the most enduring legacy was the spirit of hope and possibility that Marcus had instilled in everyone he touched. His journey was a reminder that no matter where you start, you have the power to create change, and that the ripple effect of kindness, determination, and love can transform the world. As Marcus's influence continued to grow, so did the recognition of his contributions. His work with Bright Futures, the Marcus Blackstone Foundation, and the Blackstone Leadership Institute earned him numerous accolades and honors, solidifying his place as one of the most impactful leaders of his time. One of the most significant moments in Marcus's life came when he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his tireless efforts to promote education and social justice. The award recognized not only his achievements, but also the global movement he had inspired. In his acceptance speech, Marcus spoke about the power of education to transform lives and build bridges between communities. "Education is the great equalizer," he said. "It is the key to unlocking potential, breaking cycles of poverty, and creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive." The Nobel Prize brought even more attention to Marcus's work, leading to increased funding, partnerships, and opportunities to expand his initiatives. To celebrate the 25th anniversary of Bright Futures, Marcus organized the Marcus Blackstone Global Summit, a gathering of leaders, educators, and activists from around the world. The summit was held in Crestwood, the town where Marcus's journey had begun, and it served as a reminder of how far he had come. During the summit, Marcus announced the launch of the Bright Futures Alliance, a global network of organizations and individuals committed to advancing education and social justice. The alliance aimed to share resources, collaborate on projects, and amplify the impact of its members. "This is not just about me or Bright Futures," Marcus said during his keynote address. "This is about all of us coming together to create a brighter future for the next generation." Marcus's influence extended beyond his own initiatives. His story inspired countless books, documentaries, and even a feature film that brought his journey to life on the big screen. The film, titled The Ripple Effect, starred a talented young actor who captured Marcus's humility, determination, and passion for change. The film's release sparked a new wave of interest in Marcus's work, leading to a surge in donations, volunteers, and supporters for Bright Futures and the Marcus Blackstone Foundation. As Marcus entered the final chapter of his life, he focused on sharing the lessons he had learned and ensuring that his legacy would endure for generations to come. Marcus established the Marcus Blackstone Institute for Social Change, a research and advocacy organization dedicated to advancing education, leadership, and social justice. The institute conducted groundbreaking research, developed innovative programs, and advocated for policies that supported its mission. One of the institute's most influential projects was the Global Education Index, a comprehensive report that measured access to quality education around the world. The index became a valuable tool for policymakers, educators, and activists, helping to identify gaps and prioritize resources. Marcus also wrote a second memoir, The Wisdom of a Lifetime, which reflected on his journey and the lessons he had learned along the way. The book became a bestseller, offering practical advice and inspiration for anyone looking to make a difference in the world. In the book, Marcus shared his core principles for leadership and social change. 1. Start where you are. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment or the perfect resources. Start with what you have and take the first step. 2. Listen and learn. True change comes from understanding the needs and perspectives of the people you're trying to help. Listen to their stories, learn from their experiences, and involve them in the process. 3. Build bridges. Collaboration is key to creating lasting change. Build bridges between communities, organizations, and individuals, and work together toward a common goal. 4. Never give up. The road to change is never easy, but perseverance is essential. Keep going, even when the challenges seem insurmountable. 5. Leave a legacy. Think about the impact you want to have on the world and the legacy you want to leave behind. Let that guide your actions and decisions. In his final years, Marcus spent more time with his family, enjoying the simple pleasures of life. He took long walks with Elena, played with his grandchildren, and reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. One evening, as he sat on the porch of his home, watching the sunset, Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had lived a life of purpose, and his legacy would continue to inspire and uplift others for generations to come. I may not have changed the whole world, he thought, but I changed my corner of it. And that's enough. Years after Marcus's passing, the world continued to feel the ripple effect of his work. Schools, scholarships, and programs bearing his name thrived, and his story was taught in classrooms around the world as an example of the power of one person to make a difference. But perhaps the most enduring legacy was the spirit of hope and possibility that Marcus had instilled in everyone he touched. His journey was a reminder that no matter where you start, you have the power to create change, and that the ripple effect of kindness, determination, and love can transform the world.